Hello, my name's Paul, and this is Legacy Tales. During lockdown, I've set myself a challenge to interview people and discover their amazing life stories. This month, I've been joined by Martin Erwin, CEO of Christian charity Counties UK, and this is his Legacy Tale. Okay, that's on. Lovely. This is Legacy Tales, and with me is another guest. I'm just going to get him to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Paul. My name is Martin Erwin, and I'm the CEO of Counties Ministry, Christian ministry across the United Kingdom.
Lovely. How long have you been doing that for?
Wow. Well, I've been with Counties since 1991, so 29 years I've been with Counties. But until 4 years ago, I was the Counties evangelist in Herefordshire and Worcestershire, just right on the English side of the Welsh borders, and did a lot of my work in and around Wales, particularly Cardiff, Newport, and across to places like Bilthwells, the Royal Welsh Show, where I really felt a calling to ministry when I came over in the 1980s. And then for 4 years, I've just passed my 4th anniversary in this role. I still feel that I'm new in the role. But yeah, 2016, we moved our family, lock, stock and barrel, from Herefordshire to Wiltshire to be close to the county's office, which is in Westbury. So 1st of June 2016, I began this role.
I'm just wondering, can we rewind the clock back? So you've taken us from the county's office back up to Hereford, but I want to go a little bit further. I mean, could you tell us your earliest memory you have of church or when you first heard about Jesus? I don't know if that would be in the similar sort of time, but what were you like back then?
Well, Mum and Dad were Christians and committed members of a local church. We grew up in Bangor in Northern Ireland, so that's where, if anyone is distinguishing a bit of an accent, that's the kind of now slightly washed out Ulster accent that I still have. We lived next door to a gospel hall. Actually, in our town, there were 4 gospel halls, and my mum and dad were members of one, but we lived next door to another one. So I doubled down on Sunday school. One Sunday school was 9:30 on Sunday morning, and the other gospel hall was 3:00 in the afternoon. I remember desperate, funny, I hadn't remembered this, but I'm not making this memory up. I clearly do remember, now you've asked me the question, the anticipation when I was 2.5, of being allowed to go to Sunday school with my older brother to the afternoon Sunday school, and the thrill to be able to go. And I loved singing the songs, the choruses, and learning about Jesus. So 2.5 would be my first memory of any relationship with Sunday school. And I remember my mum and dad had a storybook of blind Bartimaeus, and we had other books that I loved, like Ladybird books, the elves and the shoemaker, which was a particular favorite. Rumpelstiltskin was another, but I think I drove my mum crazy saying Bartimaeus. So she had to read the story of blind Bartimaeus to me over and over again, and so those are first memories of church and hearing about Jesus.
So would you have been a 3-day boy or 4 times a day? If you're doing two days Sunday school?
4. Yeah. So 2 Sunday schools. And then when I was old enough to sit reasonably still, we had a breaking of bread service. So that was 11 a.m. on a Sunday. So 9:30 Sunday school, 11 a.m. breaking of bread, 3 p.m. Sunday school, and then a 7 p.m. gospel service.
Wow.
We call it a gospel meeting. And then when I was older, we used to have sort of gatherings that I suppose you could call them a squash, young people's get together in someone's house.
Yeah.
Most Sunday nights we went somewhere. So you said 3 or 4. Can I go 5? When I got into my teens anyway.
That's trumped everyone else so far.
I was
3 days. I was 3 times a day. 5 is pretty good.
It was a lot. It was a lot. But, I don't remember disliking it. I mean, the breaking of bread service could be a little bit staid. There were things as a child when you got to sit still and, you want to lie on the pew and your mum and dad aren't pleased, I have memories of misbehaving and in my teens of writing notes and about the girls who also were there and, all that kind of thing, passing notes around, at the back of the church and so on. So, I was just normal in that way growing up, normal little boy doing little boys things, but I don't remember ever disliking or hating having to go to church, something I really enjoyed.
Yeah. So you knew a lot because you're going 4 to 5 times every Sunday. You're enjoying what you're hearing for the most part. You're not disliking it. So what changes then? Because obviously doing the job you're doing right now doesn't require just you kind of half liking being at church on a Sunday. So when did it go from this is just something we do with the family, sort of 4 or 5 times a day on a Sunday, to something that's your life work?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's a great question. I think in some ways there's a kind of upward trajectory, but there are step moments. There are moments of change that happen in everybody's life. The Bible talks about conversion or salvation. And so, to use the old-fashioned word I was brought up with, being saved, it's not a word we use so much anymore, and I don't tend to use it so much either. I like to talk about becoming a disciple or a follower of Jesus. Those are the kind of words I think are sometimes more helpful to people who are not brought up in a church background. But I was brought up with the concept that I needed to be saved. I don't remember ever learning that. I think it was always taught, and so I always knew that's something that there had to come a moment when you as an individual surrendered your life to Christ. And for me that first really happened, and it happened for me when I was 7. I often tell people, I do a lot of school assemblies, or I have done over the years. And my last secondary school assembly in Hereford before moving to this role, I thought, I'd earned enough brownie points to just go for it at the high school. And so I told them about the greatest day in my life, greater than the day I got married, greater than the day my children were born. It was the day that changed the trajectory of my life, and a day that I look back on and I am glad it happened. And it was a Friday night in that little gospel hall next door to the house where we lived. And it was a children's meeting. Friday night was children's meeting night. And I went, and I loved the songs, the quizzes, the Bible story, the fact that they freely fired sweets around the hall when you answered questions or sat up straight. But Dennis Walker was the name of the guy who led that children's work. And I remember that particular night, Dennis saying that you could know tonight that Jesus is your Savior, that your sins are forgiven, that heaven would be your home. And, all of the things that are wrapped up in becoming a follower of Jesus, a new life. And you might say, well, what does a 7-year-old know? What do you have to change? What sins did you have piled up? The Bible says that all of us have sinned, and we're kind of born in it. My children didn't have to learn to be naughty. They kind of had to learn how to behave. And so, yeah, sure, I wasn't some little rebel, smoking and drinking smoking pot and drinking alcohol, but I needed Jesus in my life. And at 7, I knew that. And so I ran home, round the corner where we lived, straight in past my mum, who was sitting knitting or sewing or doing something of the like. And I ran up to my bedroom and I knelt by my bed and I invited Jesus Christ to come into my life. And I thanked him for dying for me on the cross, because the Bible says that God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. And I knew, in that moment I knew, and I remember telling my mum and dad. I remember going into school, I think the next day, a guy who I don't know where he is or what he's doing, but a guy called Tommy Allen. And I told Tommy Allen about Jesus. and told Tommy Allen I'd given my life to Jesus. And I remember Tommy Allen one day, not long later, giving his life to Christ, leaning on the windowsill of the primary school classroom.
No.
You know, I don't know where he is or what he's doing. Maybe you're listening, Tommy. It'd be great to hear from you if you are. But, you know, so for me, that was life changing.
Yeah.
That was step number one. Do you want me to talk about one or two of the others? I'm talking far too
I
much.
do.
You might have to interrupt.
This is wonderful because you're talking about the faith of a child. You know, lots of people make that decision perhaps later in life, or perhaps they say, "Oh, it's a decision I'll make tomorrow. I'll do it another day." And for you to say, "Well, no, I knew at 7 that I did things wrong," I think is absolutely amazing, because a lot of us would say, "Oh, I'm not that bad." You know, if a child is going to church 5 times a day on a Sunday, they can't be that bad. But obviously, you knew that.
I knew that, and I knew something had changed. You know, I knew that Jesus had come into my life. I mean, I didn't just know it because I was told it. I knew it because it happened. Paul, that's the thing. Yeah. Something changed that day in my heart. And although there have been tough days since, I've gone through depression and doubt as to whether I was really a Christian, and asking the questions like, what does a 7-year-old know? What, you know, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I needed to know more, or maybe my faith wasn't real when I was 7. But Jesus took a little child and stood them in the middle of a circle of people. And, I think if he had asked an adult to step into the circle so he could use them for illustrative purposes, the adult would have had one of two possible reactions. One, pride, stood there with their chest puffed out and shouldered back, and yeah, you picked me, he didn't pick you. Or absolute shame and embarrassment. No way am I coming and standing in the middle, being a stand-up row with Jesus, or hide your eyes and turn your face away. Yeah. But children, this is why protecting and loving and caring for children is so precious. Children are innocent, and that innocence also shows itself in faith. They believe people, they trust people. And when Jesus invites us to trust him, he can be trusted. He never abuses our trust. He never misuses our trust. So putting my trust in Jesus was the single most momentous decision of my life. Forget anything else that's happened in the 40 years since. The next thing, Paul, was a long time till I got baptized, but for me, in my teens, I sort of drifted a bit. I never went away. I always sought to follow Jesus, but I didn't read my Bible particularly much, and I didn't pray a lot. I still went to church 4 or 5 times a day, and I knew I was a Christian. But when I was 14, 15, 16, my faith really came alive in that more adult way. And I think for those who trust Christ as a child, there has to be that almost an adult awakening or reawakening, or a call to deeper discipleship. So I got baptized as a believer, by immersion, dipping in a tank of water, to demonstrate, to publicly declare to family, friends, and church, and anyone who's watching, that I am a follower of Jesus. So that was 2. And then the third and final, so the 2 momentous steps. The third and final one was going on a summer team. Right. I know you lead beach missions, United Beach Missions. By the way, United Beach Missions used to come to Bangor, Northern Ireland, and they were the single biggest thing I looked forward to every summer. I loved the aunties and uncles, as we used to call them, of UBM. I absolutely loved that work. But so for me as an 18-year-old going on a summer team, and actually that summer team for me was in Wales, believe it or not, going to the Royal Welsh Agricultural Show with a Welsh evangelist. There were 2 Welsh evangelists. There was David Prosser, who worked with a ministry called Glow, and Bruce Anderson, who both of them are with the Lord now. Both have passed away. Bruce Anderson was a counties evangelist from Newport. And I had such a tremendous experience of being used by God on that team. that it confirmed to me what was a growing conviction, that God was calling me into full-time Christian ministry. So it took a few years after that for that to come about, but those were key steps.
So if you are listening and you are that age of 16, 17, 18, is that something you would encourage?
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, my daughters, I have 3 daughters. My youngest is 14, but my other 2 girls have been on summer trips to Hungary.
Right.
On summer teams. Karen, my eldest, who's nurse training down in Swansea, she's been to Hungary 3 times. I mean, she did her last GCSE exam, walked out the door. We had a change of clothes for her in the car, and we drove her to meet the team coming with Phil Davis to fly out from Luton Airport and head off on the team to Hungary.
Wow.
I would say, even if a young person is not sure of their Christian faith or struggling, you can have lots of doubts and lots of questions, and maybe you're not reading the Bible as well as you should, and maybe your Christian testimony is not as strong as it might be. I would still say get on a team. Get on a team, because it will expose you to genuine mission with people who are experiencing it on the front line, and you will have to trust in God, and you'll sink or swim. But my experience is anyone going on it swims.
Yeah.
The sinking might be other things in their life when they come back, but I don't know anybody who has genuinely regretted going on a summer team. So whether that's a beach mission with people like yourself, Paul, or a summer team with the Ministry of Glow, who still do summer teams, that's where I had my experience, or going on a gap year program. Counties are running a gap year program called TEAM, which stands for Training in Evangelism and Mission. So that's another step to say, okay, God, I'm going to test the water. I'm going to see what this is all about.
Yeah. So if you are curious about that, then do pray about it and ask people. There's plenty of different opportunities out there to be involved in mission in some form or fashion, and it would really highlight to you the reality, I would say, of Christian life. Because often we can feel it's in a box on a Sunday, and we can put that box down.
Yeah, and
but mission
it's interesting. Yeah, it changes your perspective, Paul. That's what I was going to say. And I think, look, let's also be honest, coronavirus has changed the perspective for us, the whole world.
Yeah.
You know, I know this because it's a podcast, could be listened to years, decades after we've recorded it.
Yeah.
But you know, it's important to say it's being recorded in a shift in culture that you and I have never experienced. And I think things will be different coming out the other end.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Things will be very different. I think we've already kind of seen that already in many ways, but yeah, for us as Christians, it's going to change the way we do things, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. And, you know, so you were talking about the reason I said that about coronavirus. You talked about getting out of the box.
Yeah.
And I think it's as though God has taken hold of the box and ripped it up. You know, he's shaking the church out of the box. You know, we are now out doing stuff we weren't doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, if this doesn't move us into doing some mission, not quite sure what will, but great, take a step. And, you know, whoever you are, wherever you're listening to this, to trust God. You know, he won't disappoint you. No. And take a step of faith and get yourself on a team. Go and experience some mission. And God will open your eyes to stuff maybe you never thought about before.
Yeah. I wonder, Martin, would you be able to say what's been the biggest difference of having Jesus in your life? From that 7-year-old to that 16, 17-year-old who really had that passion after going on mission. What difference has having Jesus had in your life compared to just carrying on as you were?
Someone has said, Paul, that you know, a lot of people say Christianity's a crutch.
Sure.
And my experience is that everybody has a crutch. Everybody has a crutch. They have an emotional crutch. They have a go-to. Yeah. Whether it's alcohol or sex or relationships or family or work, or, you know, everybody has something they lean on. And what I've discovered in this season, but in every season of life, is Jesus is not a crutch. He is a rock. He is solid. He's a foundation. And I can build my life on Christ. And it's Jesus told the story. I'm sure you've told it many times in your work with children. You know, the wise man built his house upon a rock. And Jesus says the wise person is the person, the man or woman, the young person or child who hears my words and puts them into action, who does something about it. And for me, building my life on Christ is simply wisdom. It's not my wisdom, it's God's wisdom. God has provided a foundation that will help me weather all the storms of life. And, you know, I'm in my 50s now and I've experienced a few storms. You know, we've lost loved ones. We've been through serious illness. We've just experienced the normal ups and downs that everyone else has. Yeah. I don't know where I would be without Jesus Christ. I genuinely don't. You know, sometimes I've really had doubts. You know, that might surprise people who know me, but I've had deep and genuine doubts about, not about the existence of God or the reality of Jesus, but doubts about the strength of my own faith, you know, doubting myself or my faith in God. But I always come back to the words that Peter spoke to Jesus when lots of people started leaving Jesus, when the teaching got too tough. And Jesus turned to his disciples and he said, "Are you also going to leave?" And Peter said, "Lord, you have the words of eternal life. To who else should we go?" And bottom line for me is, you offer me something better than Jesus, okay, I'm up for it, but there isn't anything. Life has proven that for 2,000 years, and my life and the lives and testimony of others is that there's no one who can replace Jesus Christ as the foundation and center of your life. So, no, I got nowhere else to go. When the chips are down and I got nowhere else to go, Jesus never leaves me nor forsakes me. So that's a friend who sticks closer than a brother.
And I would encourage those who are listening, if you don't know about this Jesus, perhaps it's the first time you've ever heard about this Jesus, I ask you to really go and find out. Please do message us at Legacy Tales, or perhaps go to a church. Perhaps you've got one next door to you, like Martin did as a child, and find out for yourself who this Jesus really is. Martin, I just wonder if I can wrap this up by asking you one final question, and I'll let you wrap it all up. When you get there, what would you like your legacy to be to counties, to be to the UK, as the Irishman who came to England? What would you like your legacy to be?
I think it's funny, isn't it? You know, because almost certainly St. Patrick was a Welshman who came to Ireland.
True.
And the legacy of Patrick was communities of Christians who made disciples, who trained believers, and who sent them out. I mean, it became the missionary sending nation through the dark ages. And yeah, I've been sent again as a missionary to the British mainland, to England particularly, but to the United Kingdom. My desire would be that the church that we have experienced in the last 20 or 30 years would be transformed, and just that I would be a part of that, even if it's a small part, whether it's in planting new churches, in seeing the renewal of existing churches. And I would love to be in the generation that reaps what others have prayed for, and that's revival. I would love to experience, but if I don't experience it, I would love my legacy to be that some of the seeds I sow have a season of reaping after I'm gone, and that there is a turning of hearts of young and old back to God in our nation. And if I can encourage others to be engaged in that work that God's called me to do, and see young people get a passion for Jesus and a passion to tell others about Jesus, I'll lay my crown at Jesus' feet, and I hope to hear him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And for me, that would be what I would long for. Yeah.
Absolutely. Martin, thank you so much for your heart, for your passion, for everything you've shared with us today. From the boy who came to faith, knowing exactly what he was doing, and how God has molded you and shaped you over the years to someone who has a heart for him and a heart to share that great message with those who listen. So Martin, thank you so much for coming on Legacy Tales. And if anyone out there listening, please do get in touch if you want to find out more. We'd love to tell you more about it. But Martin, thank you very much. Bless you.
Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. My thanks to Martin for being involved in this project, and I hope it's been a blessing to you listening today. Please do like and share this podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, and subscribe so you don't miss another one. We aim to bring a new Legacy Tale out on the first Wednesday of every month, so please do look out for that. So join me next time, won't you? Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time for another Legacy Tale.